All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Just jump right into it. So a few things need feedback on the memory team's lesson learned and knowledge sharing, performance improvement. So the goal there is to create some issues for the upcoming milestone. So we still have time on that one, but when you have a moment, take a look. And I know some folks have provided feedback, thank you. But as this milestone continues, keep throwing in ideas. And if we need to have a synchronous meeting to discuss, just let me know. I'll set something up. Memory team retro was created over the weekend. Last time we got our retro in the day before the company, the engineering-wide retro, and it puts a lot of pressure on the facilitator to make sure everything's organized. So let's get our feedback in earlier, because the next retro is on the 7th. So again, we have about a week to get that in. So early feedback is appreciated. Some feedback as I'm going through 360 reviews with everybody is be a good time for us to set up another iteration retro. Considering all the other stuff we have going on, I wanted to know what the best timing was for everybody. I was thinking maybe the end of July after this milestone gets done and after we get through previous two items. So scheduling it about a month out. And if you have any feedback on the best timing for that, just add it into that issue itself. And then feedback on memory team office hours and scheduling. I added an update this morning, answered some questions I think Matthias posted. So any questions or comments on the first section there? Nope. Cool. All right. Let's jump over to progress updates. So telemetry, I saw Chinyu furiously typing away this morning. Matthias, take it from there.
Yeah, I need to start with my stuff because I'm not, I haven't caught up yet actually on watching you did. So that would be the fourth item down, migrating to recording rules. So there was a server-side MR for Omnibus that got merged. But there was some back and forth, so I had to go back and change the client. That's in review. So telemetry, I need reviews from a bunch of different people. So telemetry reviewed it. I need a backend review still, though I think Chinyo wanted to look at it, but he's out sick. So yeah, I don't know. I just copied someone else as well, just so that it doesn't get stuck. Then the next one is another MR that's based on that, which adds request volume tracking based on workhorse requests. That's a component in the, we don't call it NSM anymore, a performance indicator. Yeah, the global one. So I'm not working on this right now because it's kind of done, but I can't put it into review until the other stuff gets merged because it's branch above the branch. So I'll just let it sit there for now. And then the third one, what I was working on today is it's like failure tracking, because one problem is that currently if anything fails, and there's a lot of things that can fail, like we can't find Prometheus, or the query returned no results, or some exception was thrown, or anything like that. We do a very defensive approach, which we had done elsewhere in usage ping as well, which is to fall back to like empty elements basically, just so that we don't fail anything else. It's just that then we are totally blind as to what didn't work. So I'm working to have like a small data structure that we return as part of the topology ping that it will include some kind of like a field that will give us some idea of what might have gone wrong. But unspecific enough so that there is no PII or anything like that in there. Yeah, so I sent out an MR for that. Yeah, that's pretty much from my side. I know that Chinyo was working on collecting that uname info stuff. That it suffered from the same back and forth due to the dependency on recording rules. We ended up deciding to unblock that we're not going to wait for this and just do an ad hoc query, which kind of makes sense for this stuff anyway. And I don't actually know where Chinyo is with the external Prometheus stuff, so I can't speak to that. That's it for me.
How's the overall epic for this work feeling? Looks like there's a lot of work still in this milestone.
Yeah, I mean, so for 30.2, we will not yet focus on, or we might start like focusing on it, but probably won't ship multi-node. because I talked to Josh and we decided, like my impression had been initially that this is pretty high priority, but apparently it's not, because I kind of underestimated, or I overestimated the number of multi-node installations. We actually have a ton of customers apparently. I don't actually have a number for you, but like several people told me, it was Ben and Joshua both told me that we have a ton of single node customers. So so we will continue to focus on single node for now. So in that area, we're making good progress. It's just like adding more data, the stuff that was missing, making it a bit more resilient. That was the resilience is like important, right? So the recording rules stuff and the failure tracking, that's all to do with, making sure we don't fail, but if we do, we know what's going wrong. And I think that will also put us in a better position to tackle a multi-node, probably maybe with 13.2, 3, I don't know yet. No, but overall, I think we're on track.
Okay. All right, and you did not spend time on Rails taking a while to boot. So status is the same as last week. Puma blog post, that's on me at the moment, actually. I submitted to marketing and asked them if there's anything else I need to do. I think it's in good shape. It's scheduled to go out on July 7th. Let's see. So Nicola, you're up.
Yeah, regarding metric transaction, like refactoring, I just rebased on master to include the latest changes and fix some specs. So it's ready for review. We waited actually to merge this another related task regarding fix for DB calls in log. So after this is fixed, this is really just waiting to be reviewed by maintainer. Actually, I think the Camille is assigned to this issue. So I hope that we could look it next.
Okay, I will take a look at that today, so you could we could somehow move that along.
Thank you. Thank you. Regarding the blob controller, that there was some back and forth with this. We took first one approach to cache something, but it turned out that this will not work. So I created another MR that seems to be working, and I also measure it, and the numbers are promising. The only thing that is left currently is to write some specs, because this is still noted as work in progress because specs are missing. So I plan to add specs today and push it forward for future reviews. So
Okay. And that's the last of the work that we're going to be involved with the blob controller, right? So I see Alexei's typing out down. We created a different issue, but probably go back to the source code team.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead, Alexei. Sorry.
No. I mean, I just created this issue. It's for the edge case, but maybe source code team may think a bit if they want to use a simpler renderers in this Rush library. Because, for example, for JSON, we could just highlight commas and separators and do not analyze the structure. But it's it would affect visual style of blob, so it would be considered by the product team.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome.
And then looks like your detect and reduce amount of cache SQL queries got merged.
Yeah, we actually merged the fix for counting number of database calls and cached calls, because some numbers were strange. So I think that when I finish this blob controller, I can start analyzing the logs and Prometheus metrics to find n+1 cache queries, and I will probably create separate issues for that. So I plan to take that one next, if there is no any other work that has bigger priority. So
So I'm thinking that this is on the Canary. I'm just gonna take a look at the Canary. What is the results from running that? I'm just curious.
Mhm.
So looking at the MR you linked here, it's actually linked to a different issue. So this is the one that was merged, right?
Yeah.
That you called out. And then
Yeah,
this is
this one is important because we can now rely on those numbers
Right.
and track those n+1 cached queries.
Yeah. So this is the one that is blocked by the MR that you said was merged. So you said there's more work still to do on this one. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't even start it, so this was like pre-requirements for this to be done.
Oh, okay. I
We
understand.
needed those numbers to like find the places that are slow and has a lot of cached SQL queries.
So
Got it.
I'm kind of thinking, because like this issue is like says detect and reduce. Maybe we should like split this issue into detect and close it.
Yeah.
And have like the reduce one as an investigation to maybe point out a number of the endpoints that we may be interested in.
Makes sense.
Because like I think like the major piece about detecting we got it covered. So
You're right. I agree.
so like if you then do like investigation of like the cached ones and like in general like amount of the SQL queries, we could point out maybe like 5 outliners in this another issue and decide if we do that or how we approach that differently.
Cool.
Nicola, would you take out this splitting of these issues?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Feature flag work, Camille.
Yeah, so I'm actually like updating MR, so I want it to be pushed to maintainer review. I planned to do it on Friday, but like it didn't solidify. So I'm just hoping like on getting this merge. As for the feature flags, we also have the feature flags office hours this week on Thursday. It's like 3 p.m. my time. So if you would be interested in joining feature flag work, feel free to also join. We're gonna make people like we're gonna announce that again to make people aware of this happening. 3 p.m. it's like 5 UTC. Am I correct? Or like 1 UTC, or why like 1 p.m. UTC?
1 p.m. UTC, I think, something like this.
It's 1 p.m. UTC time.
What's the F_ for again? I forgot. I saw it on
Feature.
the channel today. Feature?
Feature flags.
Feature. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and so dynamic image resizing that was pulled in this week. It looks like Alexi jumped on it. Thank you.
I started to look into it, but to be honest, these are great questions by Camille, and I think I don't have like any strong opinion on them so far, and I think that would be my priority to answer those questions with providing like pros and cons on each of possible decisions. To be honest, I didn't work with dynamic resize so far, but I already like see that we have some alternatives like image proxy, as was suggested on the issue.
Yeah, I mean, you can do both, right? I think the way these systems usually work are that if they would generate the size on the fly if it hasn't already been created, but if it has been created before, there isn't really a reason to do it again, right? You would just cache it and serve it as is.
Yeah, yeah, the question is to cache or like to save it for a longer time than the usual cache. I mean, to save it in database or save it in temporary cache.
The problem is, as always, cache invalidation, right? So something like, because Camille, like you suggested to look into, was it Cloudflare or like one of these like edge network providers that they have this feature baked in basically. But then of course you need to make sure like if the user sends like an update to the avatar and then some active record entity is invalidated, you need to make sure you set the headers to flush it from the edge cache as well. And yeah, this stuff can probably.
So Matthias, from what I understand, all our uploads have unique name. So like you don't have invalidate the file once you cache that
Okay,
file.
I understand. Yeah. Cool.
But the challenge is really like, if we don't have cache, like 100 images resize per second, it's pretty hefty task to do, like image resize. It's not easy. Like it's like if you use YOTPAC, it's like it's a like you need to whatever. I'm missing the word, but like it's pretty complex task, especially if you may have like very big images. So I don't know. I think like we need some kind of cache for that, but due to cloud native world, like you cannot really store that on a disk because you don't have the disk space that you could use for that cache, because then you really have the problem with removing data from the cache. So pretty interesting challenge, exactly like how to cache that, or where, or maybe like.
Why can't this just go into an S3 bucket or something like that?
Sorry?
Why can't this just go into an S3 bucket or something like that? I mean, that's a cache, right? I mean, the expensive thing is the compute, not really. That's what you don't want to expend again, right?
Yes, I mean it can go in the object store bucket. It's just the question is like, is it like the easiest thing to do? Because currently it's like the single milestone assigned to this story. But like single milestone really seems to us like we're just gonna integrate image proxy with dynamic resizing without any cache, and it may work.
Yeah, so
this is my perception about that right now.
yeah, please don't worry about the milestone. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. That's a single issue for a huge amount of work. And the comment I put in there and the feedback I've been given to Tim and Sean is, yeah, we can get it started in this quarter. It's unlikely that we'll get finished in this quarter because it's an OKR for someone somewhere. I think it's even tied to one of our OKRs. So there's a lot going on in that issue. There's a lot being requested. And there are a lot of alternatives, obviously, since we just started talking about it. We have a lot of different ideas. So it is not expected to be delivered in this milestone that is 2 weeks away from completing. So what's expected is the research and maybe an approach or a good idea on a couple of approaches. There are cost calculations that need to be considered, right? Like storing all the images versus computing versus using CDN. What's going to be our best approach going forward? So for now, it's a research issue that will spawn a lot of other issues.
But we can't use CDN on-prem installs, right? And we should also consider them as well. So, and that was the issue.
There is something like you can configure CDN to be used, but like it's really tailored right now to the Cloudflare, and there is only like the Cloudflare configuration provided. So in this particular case, like I don't really think that you could assume that on-prem install uses CDN.
But I just wonder, I mean, that's probably I'm going to look into, but I wonder, do we have any like .com priority over on-prem installs? So is this issue should be like, let's say, neutral to the installation type, and we just optimizing any GitLab? Or do we have any priorities right now that com is more important, for example, or maybe we'll have some huge on-prem client and this is more important?
This one, if I'm remembering the origins of the story right, is to cut down on overall costs because I forget the details. But we shouldn't fork code, right, between .com and versus on-prem. So we need to find a solution that in theory would work for both. So we don't want to hard code for .com, but this is this was generated from operational costs on .com to try and cut them down, if that makes sense.
So basically there is like an associated cost with egress traffic, an associated cost with the Cloudflare request and what is being cached by the Cloudflare. So I think like from what I understand, it's primarily focused on the GitLab.com, but in general, whatever we choose, we want this to be translatable to on-prem installs in the future, but today it's really about GitLab.com.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and Tim Zollman's going to have a ton of context here. So if you have questions about approach or anything else, just add them to the issue. And he's been responding pretty quickly. He's happy that we're able to look at it faster than his teams will be able to. So it's a big priority. So thanks for picking that up and asking questions. All right, Grant.
Yeah, so it's just a quick update. I've already kind of told Alexei and a few others, but on file blame, yeah, we're working on the site speed pipeline right now. Nalia's working away on that, and she found that the file that we're testing with it, this is the same JSON file we use for the blob test. It's just too big. It's too much for blame to handle, and the browser actually crashes. And then looking at that now, that's a separate issue compared to the issues we've already got for that area, because those are just the server-side response times. This is actually the browser itself, literally just can't render the file or render the page with a large file. So at that point, it's kind of changed the approach a little bit, in that we've raised a new issue to say like this area, it needs some changes, because when the file's too big, like the Linux maintainers file or a JSON file that we put to the emojis in GitLab, when you try and look at blame, it just crashes the browser. And that's probably never going to change, because no competitor can also do this area at all. Everyone else with the Linux maintainers file also crashes or just can't do it or limits it. So
yeah, I'm strongly in favor of fixing this at the product level, to be honest, and not spending time on seeing how we can make blame, super fast for like several megabytes of history.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's what we've been talking about the last few weeks as well, in that it's possible, so we have to test it. That's the kind of the boiled down approach that I take to these things. But sometimes the things that are possible shouldn't be, and I think that's the approach that needs to happen here now. And so I've raised issues that suggest that we need to apply a limit to file blame, and if the file's just got too much of a storied history, that would show on the page, and that'd be a hard limit to me try and figure out. But there needs to be some kind of limit in the product itself to actually say, no, this file's too big, we're not going to show you it. You need to either run something locally or you need to do something different. And obviously that has multiple benefits in that it doesn't crash the person's browser if the file's too big, and it won't add a heavy call on our servers as well. And with that kind of change, we're going to change the file that we use in our testing as well, and update the various issues to show the new numbers for the new file. And the file will be smaller. We still want it to be a heavy blame file, but a file that actually does render in the browser, it doesn't crash, and a file that would likely be within whatever this new limit would be. So we're still exploring that. It's probably, at the moment, we're kind of looking maybe at some Ruby files in our specs folder, which are, some of them are not as big as the file that we're currently testing. Is about 150 kilobytes with quite a bit of a storied history. They're still quite large, I guess, for blame, but it is rendering. It doesn't crash everything, so that probably is within the guidelines. So we still want blame to be improved, and blame is still a useful feature. But for very large files with a crazy history, I think it's reasonable for us now to look at limiting that for the user.
I think what would be interesting to know is some kind of cutoff point, like where we say this file is, maybe size is not even the right measure here, but maybe like how long is this call allowed to, how much time is this call allowed to spend, right, or take, and then from that see what can we deliver in that amount of time in terms of file size, and then just have a cutoff point, like where we say if the size exceeds this or that much, we just give you a link instead and say, do you really want to look at this? But if you do, it might not work.
certainly, I've not been prescriptive in how I think the limit should work. I have cited the fact that we do have a 1 megabyte limit for blob files as just a strict limit. If it's above a megabyte, we don't show it. So this is a bit more of a complicated area in that we can't. It'd be nice. We probably should try to aim to have a hard limit, whatever that limit is. Maybe it should. I think it's a mix of size and history. Obviously, the larger the file, like the one we're testing, the more lines there is, and the more history that could be shown on a single page. But a smaller file can also have like every single line could be changed in the history. So it's a little bit harder, but I think ultimately what we'd like to see is a hard limit and that we don't actually let it hit the server much at all. Because obviously if we do, then even if it's like, oh, it take 5 seconds, that still hit the server. It's still processing something that is using up time and resource to do something that isn't possible. So but at the same time, I'm not prescriptive because I appreciate this is a complicated area. So whatever limit however we have to implement the limit, whether it's us or a different team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From my impression that we have like a pretty strict criteria how large would be the file and how hard it would be to handle it by the browser. We have these blame groups amount, like it's more about the density of the changes. So how often the single line being changed. So when we get on the backend, when we understand the blame group count, we could pretty much make a decision if we're going to render it or not, because every blame group is more or less the same size of HTML. It generates more or less the same of HTML boilerplate, and I believe that the boilerplate is what kills the browser here mostly, not the content itself.
Yeah, I mean that sounds. Yeah, we want it to be. Ideally, we want the limit to be hit as early as possible in the process, so we can just stop it dead if it's going to be
Yeah,
too
of
big.
course. We don't want to waste the backend
we need
time.
it to go. We need it to go somewhere so we can actually detect. So yeah, like I said, I know it's a complicated area, so I've not been prescriptive at all. Whatever we need to do to implement it is fine with me. But ultimately, as long as the servers hit as minimal as possible and the user's experience is a very quick response of, I'm sorry, no, we can't show you this page. You need to check blame for this file, probably a git command line, or no, I'll have to be git command line, or maybe a git client locally could do it, but I suspect it'd still be quite a heavy process. But at least then it's not on us. So that's just an update about that. So the update is that there's 2 issues already open that I know some of the guys already worked on for the API and the web controller for blame. We're going to change the file because the file we're currently testing, I think, is not realistic anymore, and that it needs to be eventually blocked. So we're going to change the file so we can test it across all of our test pipelines. So the issues might get updated a little bit with different numbers and maybe a different priority depending on how they perform. So that's the last bit of that update.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, thank you. And it seems like sending back source code is the right place for that. So thanks for that update.
Yeah, it's raised against source code. It's not necessarily for us, just because I know the guys already working on this area a lot. So just let them know.
Yep. All right, Camille, working on GCK.
Yeah, so nothing. It's really like just an upgrade that we had to do with PG11.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting what Matthias helping and Zoe was helping. We managed to cover that quickly. But it's actually pretty interesting because if you look at the GDK tunnel, there's like a plenty of people having trouble right now with the PG11 because they were not running that.
Yep.
Before like this migration requiring that, and it kind of seems there's like a number of people having this challenge.
Yeah, I got pulled into a conversation on Friday about this, and I asked the question in the channel. I don't know if it's the same Slack channel you posted. I got pulled into this conversation. And the question, I guess, goes out to everybody else. Looks like Camille answered, but did everybody else know that we were requiring PG11 at 13.0?
I did, but that's because I work with the environments a lot. I knew it was coming in. On the flip side, I know at least one of my quality colleagues did get stung by this today as well. I think recently, a migration was added that specifically broke against it. Obviously, it should have been working against 10 anyway, or it's not should.
Yeah.
yeah, but it broke recently, so someone got stung with that recently. So I think in retrospect, maybe the GTK should have, or the GCK, I guess there should have been a notice put somewhere to say you need to update your local Postgres install.
Yep. All right. I will take by the blank stares into the camera that most people didn't know about the PG11 requirement. So thanks for the feedback. We'll look to get better at it. My concern is it was posted in the weekend review quite a bit, and it was posted, I think, as early as the 12.8 release notes that this would be a requirement. And so trying to get better at multimodal communication, I think a couple ideas is to post frequently and often in the development channel. And I think there's probably some better coordination we could have done with product management to make sure that it touches all these other products like GCK, GTK, and make sure that they have a plan as well. We do have a Postgres 12 timeline, so we're going to try and stay on the yearly cadence with Postgres. So about this time next year, we'll be upgrading the PG12. So we need to make sure we hit all the affected products and make sure that we don't go through this again. So if anybody has any suggestions or feedback, please let me know so we can make sure we coordinate better next time. And
I think I only have a single suggestion that like speaks the best to the people. Fail, but allow this to be ignored. Then like people would be aware that they should be upgrading to PG11 or whatever or else of the associated software, because like I don't know, it's PG11, but it could be also like Redis or whatever else dependency that it could be like mismatched really. But it's kind of like also connected with like on-prem installs. Some of these on-prem installs, they run older version of the GitLab. Sorry, they run a new version of the GitLab, but they run their own PG database that is not GitLab owned. So now it's kind of like if we don't somehow like strong validate it, it kind of can lead to like misbehavior, because from the features that I know that we started using from the PG11 is like the cheap defaults on columns without table rewrites. And now recently we also started using database partitioning with this migration. So I think like my general suggestion is like, if we know that there is like a requirement of PG11, let's just fail application, but just, I don't know, introduce some env variable to allow this to temporarily disabled. But other than that, like this probably raises the awareness like pretty violently, but makes people really like be prepared for that change, but still like skip that for a time being.
So if I upgrade, let's say I'm on 12.x, if I run Omnibus and I want to upgrade to 13, does Omnibus actually migrate my database to PG11
it does, yeah.
That's cool.
If it's all single host, single node, yeah. Multi-node as well, in theory. It's a fair call out, yeah. I've not heard of any customers for self-managed that have been stung by this. Maybe better to ask support to see if actually anyone has any raised issues saying, well, my third-party Postgres is still 10, and I was able to upgrade GitLab without any warnings or kind of, even hard failures to say, no, you can't upgrade your database to the wrong version. Certainly, I think that's what should happen internally with the tooling. Either if you try and upgrade GDK or another one, it should say, hey, your Postgres is incorrect. I'd like to hope the same happens for customers, but yeah, I hadn't considered the idea of someone using a third-party Postgres, because obviously Omnibus, as long as you're updating at the same time, I would have updated Postgres for you automatically. So I guess for most users it should be fine, but there probably has been, or there probably will be some users out there that may have missed the release notes or missed the other places that we call out that this is a now requirement. So worth checking for that kind of thing as well, because yeah.
Yep, we'll get better next time.
By the way, Craig, to be fair, I think it was fairly well communicated. I think that, I knew there were these upgrades were happening, and I looked at this table before on the docs. I think the one thing that wasn't totally clear to me, but I might have just not read it thoroughly enough, was the exact cutoff point, like when an older version is specifically not supported anymore. But I think most people knew that this was happening.
Sure. Yeah, again, I think I've heard it said somewhere, if you say it 5 times and you cover 80% of the audience, right, it's probably good. I think the thing that was missed here was just incorporating it into GDK and GCK and making sure that there was deprecation warnings early on, making sure that like GDK didn't upgrade. So a lot of people were stuck and to the point where they had to drop the entire database and rebuild from scratch. So it wasn't a good experience for those folks using it. So we can get better next time. And this is, I mean, it's going to be an annual occurrence of us upgrading Postgres. So we need to make sure that we consider all these things every year and get better with customer feedback. So that's all. And actually, I'll just create an issue for better communication on Postgres upgrade so that we make sure we capture all these now and don't forget them 9 months from now. So thanks for that. Let's see. And then there was one new item that was added, I think either today or Friday, about allowing admins to configure the rack timeout for Puma. And Camille said it was a low-hanging fruit. I just want to make sure people know about it since we only have a little over 2 weeks in the milestone left so that it does not get forgotten. I think everything else that was unassigned was associated to some of the point pair work that folks are doing. Like there's a handful of telemetry issues that are not assigned. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Cool. Anything else we need to cover today? One general question. So during the sharding working group, I was asked to stop screen sharing during the meeting. How do folks want to continue the memory team meeting? Would you rather have the screen share with the notes or not? Any preferences?
I'm okay with screen sharing of notes. It
I
puts a
never
nice
thought
point
about that.
and context because you could see like where discussion is moving, where the scroll, and you could quickly, when you're rewatching the meeting, instead of just watching faces everywhere. I mean,
yeah, it's
Certainly.
easier to keep track because you can select the text or like move the mouse around the link or something. So
yeah.
and I can see when you write the comments or when it's easier than to keep track separately. So for me,
Yeah, I think I agree. Screen sharing sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, I know certainly as an attendee, I prefer screen sharing, but it I guess depends on the audience of the meeting. So I will keep screen sharing during these meetings. All right. Thanks everybody. Happy Monday.
Monday.
Happy Monday.
You
See ya.
guys.